The grandfather clock in the Davidson mansion struck 5 in the morning when 8-year-old Amara felt rough hands shaking her awake. Victoria's perfectly manicured nails dug into her thin shoulder as the woman yanked the blanket away. The child's room, once painted in soft lavender by her late mother, felt cold and hostile in the pre-dawn darkness. Amara's eyes struggled to open, heavy with exhaustion from cleaning until midnight the night before. Her body ached in places children shouldn't know existed, and her stomach had been cramping for 3 days straight. But she knew better than to complain. Complaints brought consequences far worse than hunger and pain. Victoria stood over the bed like a perfectly dressed nightmare, already wearing her designer workout clothes and full makeup despite the early hour. Her blonde hair was pulled into a tight bun that made her face look even more severe than usual. She had married Marcus Davidson exactly 23 months ago, presenting herself as a loving woman who understood grief and could help heal their broken family. Marcus, devastated by his wife Sarah's sudden death in a car accident and drowning in his work, had been grateful for someone who seemed to care about his daughter. But Victoria had studied him carefully, knowing exactly what mask to wear. She had researched his schedule, learned he traveled internationally at least 15 days per month, and calculated that she would have plenty of time alone with Amara to establish her real agenda. The transformation had been gradual and calculated. First, Victoria dismissed the housekeeper, claiming she wanted to bond with Amara by taking care of the home together. Then she let go of the cook, saying home-cooked meals would be more nurturing. One by one, she eliminated witnesses until only a skeleton crew remained, all too frightened of losing their jobs to speak up. She told Marcus that Amara was struggling with her grief and acting out, requiring firm boundaries and structure. When he was home, Victoria played the devoted stepmother, braiding Amara's hair and helping with homework. But the moment his car left the driveway, the mask would slip off, revealing something monstrous beneath. This morning was particularly cruel because Victoria was hosting an important charity luncheon for 50 wealthy women. She needed the mansion to be absolutely spotless, every surface gleaming, every corner perfect. She had deliberately waited until the last minute to prepare, knowing it would be impossible for Amara to complete the task. This was part of her psychological torture, setting impossible goals and then punishing the child for failing. Amara stumbled out of bed, her legs shaking from hunger and fatigue. She hadn't eaten a proper meal in 4 days, surviving on stale bread crusts and tap water that she drank from the bathroom sink when Victoria wasn't watching. The pain in Amara's stomach had started as a dull ache 3 days ago, but had progressively gotten worse. It felt like someone had tied her intestines in knots and was slowly tightening them. She had tried to hide it, knowing that showing weakness only made Victoria angrier. The woman believed that children in her native Romania worked from dawn to dusk without complaint, and American children were simply spoiled. She often told Amara stories about her own childhood, though Marcus didn't know these stories were complete fabrications. Victoria had actually grown up in comfortable middle-class suburbs, but she had learned that tragic backstories made wealthy men more sympathetic and less likely to investigate inconsistencies. Amara dragged the heavy bucket down the marble staircase, each step sending shooting pains through her abdomen. The cleaning supplies smelled harsh and chemical, making her already queasy stomach turn. She had to stop 3 times on the stairs, gripping the banister while waves of nausea washed over her. Victoria watched from the top of the stairs, sipping her morning green juice and checking her phone. She had already posted on social media about her dedication to charitable causes, complete with photos of the mansion's exterior. Her followers praised her for her generosity and style. Having no idea that a child was suffering just outside the frame of her perfect pictures, by 7 in the morning, Amara had managed to clean only 2 rooms, moving at a fraction of her usual speed. The dining room alone had taken an hour because she kept having to stop and press her hands against her stomach, trying to massage away the agony. The crystal chandelier above the mahogany table seemed to spin when she looked up at it, and she realized she was becoming dizzy. Her forehead felt hot and clammy at the same time, and her vision kept blurring. She knew these were bad signs, remembering when her mother had taught her about listening to her body's warnings. But her mother was gone, and the woman who had taken her place didn't believe in weakness. Victoria's patience finally snapped when she found Amara sitting on the floor of the parlor, unable to stand. The child had tried to get up several times, but her legs simply wouldn't cooperate. The pain had become so intense that tears streamed down her face despite her desperate attempts to stop them. Victoria's heels clicked sharply against the marble as she approached, each step echoing like a countdown to something terrible. She grabbed Amara's arm and tried to pull her to her feet, but the child cried out in agony and collapsed again. This only made Victoria angrier. She had guests arriving in 5 hours, and this pathetic display was ruining her timeline. The confrontation escalated when Amara finally found her voice and whispered that she needed a doctor. Victoria laughed, a cold sound that echoed off the high ceilings. She accused Amara of being manipulative, of trying to embarrass her in front of important guests. She said that Amara was just like her mother, weak, dramatic, and always seeking attention. This cruel comment about Sarah devastated Amara, who began sobbing harder. Victoria raised her hand, holding the crystal glass of juice, ready to throw it at the child to shock her into compliance. She had done this before with ice water, finding that sudden cold shocked Amara into obedience. But this time, something different happened. The mansion's heavy front door didn't just open. It exploded inward with such force that it bounced off the wall and left a dent in the imported wallpaper. Marcus Davidson stood in the doorway like an avenging angel, his 6'3" frame filling the space entirely. His usually immaculate suit was wrinkled from the red-eye flight from Tokyo, his face unshaven, his eyes wild with a mixture of exhaustion and sudden, terrible understanding. He had come home early to surprise Amara for her upcoming birthday, having found a rare first edition of her favorite book in a tiny shop in Japan. But the scene before him erased every thought except one. His baby girl was in danger. The next few seconds seemed to move in slow motion. Marcus's eyes took in everything. Amara crumpled on the floor in obvious agony. The cleaning supplies scattered around her, the bucket of dirty water, her too thin frame and clothes that hung loose, and Victoria standing over her with a raised hand. His mind, trained to process complex business situations instantly, understood everything in that moment. Every excuse Victoria had made, every explanation for why Amara was always in her room when he video called, every reason why the house staff seemed nervous around him. It all clicked into place with horrible clarity. Marcus crossed the room in 3 strides, dropping to his knees beside Amara with such force that his knees cracked against the marble. He gathered her into his arms, and the feeling of her body so much lighter than she should be made his heart shatter. She was burning with fever, her breathing shallow and rapid. When she opened her eyes and saw him, she whispered words that would haunt him forever. "Daddy, you came. I prayed you would come. My stomach hurts so much. Please don't leave me with her again." The trust and desperation in her voice destroyed something inside him and rebuilt it into pure, protective rage, without taking his eyes off his daughter. Marcus pulled out his phone and called 911, his voice deadly calm as he described Amara's symptoms. The operator immediately recognized the signs of potential appendicitis and severe dehydration. An ambulance was dispatched with the highest priority. Then Marcus called his security chief, ordering him to come immediately with a full team. Finally, he called his lawyer, speaking only 5 words: "Get here now. Bring police." Through all Of this, he never let go of Amara, cradling her against his chest and whispering that Daddy was here, that she was safe, that no one would hurt her again. Victoria's mask completely shattered as she realized her carefully constructed plan was falling apart. She began talking rapidly, her accent becoming thicker with panic. She claimed Amara was a troubled child who made up stories that she had been trying to provide structure and discipline. She said the child was manipulative, that she refused to eat as a form of rebellion, that the cleaning was meant to teach responsibility. But her words fell on deaf ears. Marcus wasn't listening to her lies anymore. He was focused entirely on Amara, feeling her forehead, checking her pulse, noting every bruise and mark on her exposed skin. His mind was cataloging evidence even. As his heart broke into smaller and smaller pieces, the paramedics arrived within 8 minutes, though it felt like hours to Marcus. They quickly assessed Amara and confirmed she needed immediate hospitalization. Her appendix was dangerously inflamed, she was severely dehydrated and malnourished, and she showed clear signs of prolonged physical and psychological abuse. As they prepared her for transport, one paramedic quietly told Marcus that they were mandatory reporters and would be notifying Child Protective Services and the police. Marcus nodded, welcoming any authority that would help him protect his daughter. He climbed into the ambulance with Amara, never letting go of her hand, leaving Victoria standing in the mansion with security guards blocking her exit. The hospital became Oxa's world for the next week. Amara's appendix had been hours from rupturing, which could have been fatal. She required immediate surgery, followed by intensive treatment for malnutrition and dehydration. The medical team discovered old fractures that had healed improperly, bruises in various stages of healing hidden under her clothing, and signs of severe psychological trauma. Marcus never left her side except when required during surgery. He slept in the uncomfortable hospital chair, ate vending machine food, and canceled every meeting, every conference call, every obligation that wasn't about Amara. During Amara's recovery, the truth began to emerge in horrifying detail. The police investigation revealed that Victoria had installed hidden cameras throughout the mansion to monitor Amara and ensure she couldn't seek help. They found a locked cabinet full of food in Victoria's room while Amara had been systematically starved. There were detailed records on Victoria's computer of her plan to gradually escalate the abuse until Amara either died accidentally or became so psychologically broken that she could be institutionalized. Victoria had taken out a large life insurance policy on Amara without Marcus's knowledge, and had been slowly poisoning her with small doses of household chemicals to make her sick. The household staff, finally free from Victoria's threats, provided devastating testimony. The gardener, an elderly man named Thomas who had worked for the Davidson family for 15 years, broke down crying as he described watching Amara work in the garden in 100-degree heat without water. The part-time chef revealed that Victoria had ordered her to prepare elaborate meals for herself while Amara was given only scraps. The driver admitted he had been forced to lie about Amara's whereabouts when Marcus called, saying she was at friends' houses when she was actually locked in the basement. Each revelation added another layer to Marcus's guilt and rage. Marcus's security team and private investigators uncovered Victoria's true history, which was far darker than anyone had imagined. Her real name wasn't even Victoria. It was Natasha. Volkov and she had a history of targeting wealthy widowers with young children. She had done this at least 3 times before, each time escaping prosecution by disappearing when things got too dangerous. In one case, a child had died under suspicious circumstances, ruled an accident, but never properly investigated. She had multiple identities, fake credentials, and a network of references who were actually accomplices. She was a professional predator who had turned child abuse into a calculated business model. The legal proceedings moved swiftly once the evidence was compiled. Victoria, or Natasha, was charged with attempted murder, aggravated child abuse, fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. The district attorney, a mother herself, personally took on the case and pursued the maximum possible sentences. During the trial, Amara had to testify via video link from a safe room, with Marcus holding her hand the entire time. She spoke clearly and bravely about the basement punishments, the starvation, the forced labor, and the constant psychological torture. Her testimony was so powerful that several jury members were seen wiping away tears. Marcus transformed completely as a father after that terrible morning. He immediately restructured his entire business empire, promoting trusted executives to handle day-to-day operations while he focused on Amara. He sold 3 of his 5 companies, keeping only the 2 that could be managed remotely. He hired the best child psychologist in the country, Dr. Rebecca Chen, who specialized in trauma recovery. He converted one wing of the mansion into a healing space for Amara, with an art therapy room, a library filled with her favorite books, and a small indoor garden where she could grow flowers like she used to with her mother. The healing process was slow and required infinite patience. Amara had night terrors where she would wake up screaming, thinking Victoria had returned. She hoarded food under her bed, in her closet, behind furniture, anywhere she could hide it. She apologized constantly for everything, even for kneading. To use the bathroom, she flinched when anyone raised their hand near her. She couldn't eat normal portions, her stomach having shrunk from months of starvation. Marcus attended every therapy session, learning about trauma responses and how to help his daughter heal. He discovered that healing wasn't linear. There were good days and bad days, breakthroughs and setbacks. Marcus also dealt with his own trauma and guilt through therapy. He had to confront the fact that his obsession with business success had blinded him to his daughter's suffering. He examined every sign he had missed, every opportunity he had had to see the truth. The therapist helped him understand that predators, like Victoria, were experts at manipulation, but that didn't absolve him of the responsibility to be more present. He made a commitment to never again let anything come before his daughter's well-being. He even wrote letters to Sarah's grave, apologizing for failing to protect their child and promising to do better. 6 months after the incident, Amara spoke at a conference about child abuse prevention. Despite being only 8.5 years old, she insisted on sharing her story to help other children. Marcus stood beside her as she spoke to an audience of social workers, teachers, and parents. She said, "Sometimes children cry in ways adults don't hear. Sometimes our stomachs hurt, or we have accidents, or we act out because we don't have words for what's happening to us. Please listen to the quiet cries too. Please see us even when we're trying to be invisible. My daddy saved me when he finally saw, but I want every child to be seen before it gets that bad." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Marcus used his wealth and influence to create the Sarah and Amara Foundation, dedicated to protecting vulnerable children from predators who infiltrate families. The foundation developed screening protocols, warning sign education, and support systems for children in blended families. He lobbied for stricter background checks and psychological evaluations for people marrying into families with minor children. He funded safe houses where children could report abuse without fear. He also established a legal fund to help families pursue justice against abusers who might otherwise escape consequences due to good lawyers. The mansion itself was completely transformed. Marcus removed every trace of Victoria's presence and redecorated with Amara's input. The cold marble floors were covered with soft rugs. The formal dining room became a cozy family space. The basement, where Amara had been locked, was converted into a bright playroom and theater. Marcus hired a new staff, each carefully vetted and trained in recognizing signs of abuse. He also installed an open-door policy. Amara could talk to any staff member about anything without fear of punishment. The house that had been a prison became a sanctuary. Amara's recovery had breakthrough moments that Marcus treasured. The first time she asked for seconds at dinner. The first time she laughed without immediately apologizing. The first time she slept through the night without nightmares. The first time she trusted him enough to be angry at him for something small, showing she knew he wouldn't hurt her for having emotions. Each milestone was celebrated quietly but joyfully. Marcus documented everything in a journal, planning to give it to Amara when she was older so she could see how brave and strong she had been. The relationship between Marcus and Amara deepened into something unbreakable. They developed rituals that helped her feel safe: morning walks in the garden, evening story time, cooking Saturday breakfast together. Marcus learned to braid hair from YouTube videos, mastering the complex styles Sarah used to create. He attended every school event, every therapy appointment, every doctor's visit. He became an expert in child psychology, nutrition for healing bodies, and trauma-informed parenting. Other parents often asked him for advice, amazed at his dedication and knowledge. Victoria was eventually convicted on all charges and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During sentencing, the judge called her a calculated predator who weaponized the sacred trust of family. Her accomplices were also arrested and convicted. Her victims from previous schemes came forward, finally getting justice they had been denied. The case became a landmark in child protection law, establishing new precedents for prosecuting systematic child abuse. Victoria's prison letters to Marcus, alternating between threats and pleas for forgiveness, were turned over to authorities as evidence of her continued dangerous mindset. Years passed, and Amara grew into a remarkable young woman. She excelled academically, but more importantly, she developed deep empathy and compassion. She volunteered at hospitals, reading to sick children. She mentored kids from troubled homes. She spoke at conferences and schools about recognizing and reporting abuse. When she graduated high school as valedictorian, her speech moved the entire auditorium to tears. She spoke about how pain can be a teacher, how survival can become strength, and how love can heal even the deepest wounds. She thanked her father for choosing her over everything else and showing her that she was worth saving. Amara decided to become a pediatrician specializing in child abuse detection and prevention. Marcus supported her completely, proud beyond words of her choice to transform her trauma into healing for others. He attended her medical school graduation, crying openly as she took her oath to do no harm. She established protocols in her practice that became national standards for identifying abuse in children who couldn't or wouldn't speak about their experiences. She developed nonverbal assessment tools and trained other doctors in recognizing the subtle signs that saved countless children from suffering. Marcus never remarried, dedicating his life to being the father Amara deserved. He walked her down the aisle at her wedding to a kind man who understood her history and loved her even more for her strength. He was in the delivery room when her first child was born, promising to be the grandfather who would always watch, always protect, always believe. When Amara named her daughter Sarah after the grandmother she would never meet, Marcus wept with joy and sorrow combined. He saw the cycle of love continuing, but this time without the shadows that had nearly destroyed them. The Davidson family story became a cautionary tale and an inspiration. Marcus spoke at business conferences about the danger of prioritizing success over family. He challenged other executives to examine their own blind spots. He funded research into predatory behavior in blended families. He established mandatory child welfare training in all his companies. He proved that redemption was possible, but required constant vigilance and commitment. His business success meant nothing compared to the success of raising Amara into the remarkable woman she became. On the 10th anniversary of that terrible morning, Marcus and Amara returned to the spot where she had collapsed. The marble floor was now covered with a beautiful carpet Amara had chosen, decorated with butterflies emerging from cocoons. They stood there together, remembering the pain but celebrating the healing. Amara took her father's hand and said, "You saved my life that day, Daddy, not just by getting me to the hospital, but by choosing me over everything else. You showed me I was worth fighting for." Marcus pulled her into a hug and replied, "You saved me too, sweetheart. You showed me what really mattered. Every day since has been a gift." The title of their story spread far and wide. Black girl pleaded, "My stomach hurts so much." Then suddenly, millionaire father rushed in and shouted for justice, for protection, for the sacred duty of parents to protect their children above all else. It became required reading in social work programs, a case study in law schools, and a rallying cry for child protection advocates. But for Marcus and Amara, it was simply their story, a story of pain that led to purpose, of suffering that led to strength, and of a father's love that proved powerful enough to overcome evil. They had won not because they were wealthy or influential, but because when the moment of truth came, a father chose his daughter over everything else in his world, and that choice changed both their lives forever.